Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. You have made the right decision to invest the next hour in, because this event will be about the importance of connecting the interests of the planet with the interests of people, and more specifically on how we can connect water, food systems and nutrition together in order to play an active and solution-oriented role for people as well as for the planet. It is about time that we leave behind the siloed approach and that we find joint solutions. That's the only way to move forward. I'm extremely happy to tell you that this event is organized by the Action Against Hunger, the civil society network of the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, and the Scaling Up Nutrition movement as a whole. We have 45 minutes, but it will be the most dynamic 45 minutes that you can think of, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear action and results-oriented solutions. And for that reason, I am extremely happy to first give the floor to Duncan Williamson from ACF, Action Against Hunger, and he is the climate change lead and food crisis researcher. But today we don't want to hear a lot about your research. We want to hear examples, inspiring examples of potential solutions. Over to you, Duncan Williamson.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, and I've been asked to frame this session to just demonstrate how climate change, water, and nutrition are linked, and yeah, it's not always good. And if you've been watching the previous session, which was fantastic, looking at aquatic foods, there was a really good example in that where they're talking about how climate change is impacting on fresh water, which is impacting on freshwater fisheries, which is impacting on local food security, which is a great demonstration of how they're linked. So what we know is that climate change is unfortunately making crops, livestock and fisheries less productive. It's also making them less nutritious as well. We're also seeing that extreme weather is changing the seasons, so it's harder to predict what it is to grow, when to grow it. And it's also changing rainfall patterns. And then, however, we also know that 72% of fresh water is used by the agriculture sector. And changes in weather are making it more unpredictable to know what water's coming and how to grow it. It's also impacting across the whole river catchment. So, for example, if you go up into the mountainous regions of the sort of Himalayas, you're seeing that there's reduced snowfall. Reduced snowfall means there's reduced runoff, which means the whole water catchment has less water. So, which is impacting the availability throughout the entire catchment. There's also another impact of this, is there's less water that's available. People turn to aquifers, and aquifers across the world are being increasingly over-extracted, and these take a long, long time to recharge. So it's not a sustainable long-term solution. And linked to this, there's also 3.2 billion people who live in agricultural areas that are in high water stress areas. They're in danger of high-risk water shortages. So they're not in areas that are benefiting from high water security. So climate change and fresh water are linked, inextricably linked, but these also will impact on nutrition. If you can't guarantee what crops are happening, it's going to be harder to get good nutrition, to be able to ensure that you have access to food the entire year. And what we're seeing already at the moment is in Madagascar, has been widely reported, we're seeing the first climate change famine, which is a result of parts of the country have had almost no rainfall for 2 years, so crops have failed and people are suffering. So, and I know that's all quite sort of a depressing view because they are all linked together, but what this panel and this group is going to show is how with the right planning, the right thinking, and moving out of our silos, we can come up with lots of solutions. And at the moment, a lot of you who are present in the building, you're at COP26, and we can't just think of COP26 as the be-all and end-all. It's the climate change COP, because in a few weeks' time, you've got nutrition for growth.
Duncan.
Yes.
We are already depressed because all the problems, etc., that are there. But you are an action leader. So give us a few inspiring examples of how to address the water and nutrition and planetary climate issues. A few inspiring examples, and then we move on and get you back into the panel.
Yeah. Well, yes. No, thank you. Yes, I realised that. I was just going there because I think one of the examples is we link together the big global frameworks. We work together. We work across them because by thinking about them together, we can come up with positive solutions. But there's also things that, say, for example, Action Against Hunger in Madagascar has been working on developing market gardens. And through using market gardens, we're looking at bringing in new crops, new seeds, which are more resilient to climate change. They also provide a variety of sources of food for people. So people aren't reliant on just one or two crops. They're reliant on a selection of crops, which means if one fails, others will survive. We're also providing training. We're making sure that the crops are drought resistant, and we're providing storage techniques for people. So what you do is you create crops that are adaptable to climate change, and you make sure that there's more water available for people, and they're using water in a way that means less is needed, and you're enhancing local nutrition security. And if you're lucky, there's some food left over that can be sold, which enhances their economic stability as well. So that's the sort of program we're looking at. And we're finding these are very low cost to deliver. Once the training is in place, you can step back from it. And it does sort of meet a lot of these challenges as we move forward.
Duncan, one more question. How many people in Madagascar, because these are the proposed or the examples that can inspire people. How many people are involved, and can they already scale this up themselves?
So I can't give you exact numbers of how many people are involved, but we are working with communities across the country. We've got hundreds of staff on the ground to deliver this. And what we are finding is it is very, very scalable. We are there to provide the initial tools, but we're also providing capacity building and training so people can help each other going forward. And our staff on the ground, they are really well trained. They move around in mobile clinics. They've got mobile resources so they can get to different communities. And our plan is never to be there permanently. We want to help people be self-sustaining. We're there to bridge the short-term need. We're not, because we're sure with the right training that we won't be needed in the long term.
Thank you very much, Duncan. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is why you have chosen the right event to go to, because this time we will focus on action and results. And we know the problems are huge, but we need to find smart combined solutions that can be owned and driven by people themselves. We want to hear more about this example in Madagascar later on, and how it can be amplified to other countries to also find solutions over there, because drought is a problem everywhere, as well as hunger and malnutrition. We move on to Dr. Susan Lopez, who is the advisor on food and nutrition security in Honduras, and she's also the focal point bringing the people together for scaling up nutrition. Honduras, Spanish-speaking country. You can find the channel on your system, and we go to Susan. Susan, we want to hear your actions. Over to you. Buenos días.
Gracias, Gerda. Buenos días, buenas tardes al equipo. Gracias al Movimiento SUN y a los miembros de Acción contra el Hambre por este evento. No voy a hablar sobre el panorama que ya todos lo conocemos, pero sí hablar sobre un poco lo que ha hecho nuestro país en efecto de mitigar y adaptar ciertas medidas ante este efecto de cambio climático, que es un evento global. Y ahí mencionarles que en el marco de la política de seguridad alimentaria y nutricional y su estrategia de implementación desde el 2014, se impulsó una alianza llamada Alianza para el Corredor Seco como parte de esta política pública. Y lo interesante de esta alianza es que es una alianza multiactor, multidonante, con las líneas que el gobierno central tira en términos de reducción de pobreza y en términos en ese momento que era la reducción de la desnutrición crónica, que sigue siendo la prevalencia más alta en términos de todas las formas de malnutrición. Pero esta estrategia tiene como eje y como eje central el mitigar los impactos del cambio climático y fortalecer las medidas de adaptación justamente desde una óptica de nivel local. No hacer una programación desde el nivel nacional como acostumbramos o dependiendo de cómo vengan los recursos, sino escuchar a los gobiernos locales y fortalecer la planificación municipal. Las estrategias de intervención de esta alianza fueron orientadas justamente hacia el aumento de la productividad, el acceso a mercado de los productores, el fortalecimiento de las capacidades de planificación y de presupuesto de los municipios y de las mancomunidades, obviamente acciones en salud y nutrición, el manejo del recurso agua de manera sostenible y la mejora de la infraestructura productiva. Los principales enfoques de esta iniciativa fueron pues justamente ese enfoque de primero de una agricultura, de promover la agricultura sostenible a la nutrición, aumentando la resiliencia desde los pequeños productores y creando esas medidas de resiliencia a nivel de la planificación municipal que partía justamente desde esa fortaleza en cuanto a la planificación y cómo orientar sus presupuestos. Luego el enfoque territorial, que fue este enfoque que fue lo innovador, por lo menos en nuestro país, y era fomentar la seguridad alimentaria y nutricional y la protección, sobre todo la nutrición, desde la planificación local, pero alcanzando sinergias al mismo tiempo en el manejo de los recursos naturales, en las medidas de adaptación y de mitigación referente al cambio climático, dado que la área de influencia era sobre el corredor seco que cubre, ya todos sabemos, el corredor centroamericano, y que es un área bastante sufrida en este sentido. Y por último, y quizás resaltar y un poco viendo los resultados, adelantándome un poco a los resultados de este evento, es el resaltar ese enfoque multidonante. Muy poco podemos hacer, ya sea como gobierno, ya sea como actor de sociedad civil, ya sea como sector academia, si trabajamos en compartimientos estancos. Y aquí es importante resaltar de que esta cumbre y este evento donde toma tres aspectos importantes y que todo va al final a la vida humana, al poder proteger a la vida humana, debe de esta manera pues crearse ese como alianza común entre todos los actores que estamos vinculados al tema de desarrollo. Y como lo digo, al final, el fin último es no solo la protección de la población como tal, sino el estado nutricional, que sabemos que esto es un factor en su crecimiento y desarrollo como personas hablando.
Susan, I would like to come in because you're talking about that we need to work together. And I couldn't agree more with you, but you are able to bring all these people to the table. How are you making it attractive for people from different backgrounds, stakeholders, but also different sectors to come together and to work together? Because it is a secret that needs to be shared. Susan, in 1 minute, because you can do it, but you can also continue for 1 hour. I'm sure about it. 1 minute.
Okay. Un minuto. Ok, creo que tiene que ver con los marcos legales de los países. En el caso de seguridad alimentaria, nosotros contamos con un sistema de gobernanza justamente que habla sobre lo que mencionas. ¿Quién toma decisión? El gobierno, pero el gobierno toma decisión en torno a una mesa conformada de alto nivel donde están todos los actores vinculantes al desarrollo. De esta manera, el gobierno dicta las reglas del juego, vamos a orientarnos en este tema, ya sea cambio climático o en el caso específico de seguridad alimentaria. Y los actores que están en esta mesa con esas líneas pues van reorientando su accionar. Entonces, aquí es importante eso. La guía dentro de los países, contar con un sistema de gobernanza, llámese cambio climático, llámese nutrición, llámese agua. Si no se cuenta ese sistema de gobernanza, muy difícil lo que hablaba al inicio. Cada sector va a seguir por el área que le parezca.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me explain a little bit what she said, because I learned that the translation is not working very well. Do you get the right translation? Did you get her? Well, she says that you can only solve the problems by working together. For this reason, you need to make sure that you bring the different sectors: health, water, environment, food, education, social protection together. And there need to be incentives to really work together. So not an incentive to continue in your own silo and to continue to blah, blah, but a focus on actions and results that can be owned by people. And she said the government also needs to take responsibility and bring the different stakeholders, private sector, civil society, young people, indigenous people around the table, telling them, guys, we need you to develop the people's and the planet agenda here in Honduras. We have many problems, but only by working together we can get it done. So this is a shining example of collaboration between people in order to tackle the different challenges in one go. Thank you very much, Susana. Let us go to Bzune Asef. And he is the regional water and sanitation specialist in the Horn of Africa. Bzune, you have heard already that we want to have concrete examples of potential solutions for people where they tackle both the planetary and the water and nutrition issues. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening all. I'm privileged to echo the voice of poor Africans who are impacted by climate change.
Closer to your micro, Bzune.
I'm privileged to echo the voice of poor Africans who are impacted by climate change in the COP26 Global Climate Summit. I'm also honored to address the impact of climate change, induced conflict and water crisis on the nutritional security in the Horn of Africa. Climate change is real and perceivable in the Horn of Africa. It is one of the key drivers of domestic and cross-border conflict and displacement in the region. The number and intensity of political instability, violent and sporadic conflict, migration and displacement.
Bzune, you're a specialist in water and sanitation, not a specialist in micro. Come as close as possible to your micro. Try to eat it and speak into your micro. Close.
Yeah, I'm very close to the microphone actually.
Very good.
All right. So the number and intensity of political instability, violent and sporadic conflict, migration and displacement are increasing with climate change and weather variability. This affects the fragile livelihood system and forced many vulnerable communities to the brink of hunger and starvation. Climate change, conflict, and displacement nexus makes the Horn as an epicenter of humanitarian crisis. The decline of pasture and water and competing demands of scarce water resources exacerbate the ecological imbalance and trigger massive resource-based conflict and displacement in the region. Displaced people, particularly vulnerable migrants and IDPs, are highly vulnerable to innate and cross-border epidemics, hunger, malnutrition, gender-based violence, and protection risks. This disproportionately impacting women and children in the region. We urge political will and commitment of the national and international communities to anticipatory financing the predictable climate change emergency in the Horn of Africa. This is the right time to strategically shift from the dogmatic to flexible and adaptive management, from emergency to triple nexus, and from climate and environmental blindness to climate sensitive, inclusive, and people-centered approach. If we do this, I'm sure we can address the multifaceted impact of climate change in the Horn of Africa. Climate change, water scarcity, and undernutrition are critically impacting the most vulnerable people in the region. Drought and flood are the two principal events seriously impacting public health and nutrition.
Thank you
droughts.
very much, Bizune.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. We come back to you in the panel because we have some concrete questions for you later on. But first we want to go to Maxwell Mumba. And Maxwell is a nutrition champion, a nutrition leader. And he will talk about youth actions. And Maxwell, speak from the heart, talk about actions, but also concrete results and what we can learn from you to scale them up, because there are still too many problems. Over to you, Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Greta. I hope I'm loud and clear. Greetings from Zambia. My name is Maxon Mumba, and I'm a SAN youth leader for nutrition. It's good that we young people have been given an opportunity to this event, of which it's of great importance that we hear from the young people's view. Greta, my presentation will be based on youth and commitments in order to achieve transformational change with regards to the safe water, nutrition, and climate change. So I would start by saying youth remain to be crucial in amplifying the efforts to restore the planet and to protect life while integrating biodiversity in transformation of the food systems. Why am I saying so? Young people remain to be the future generation of today, not tomorrow. And it's important that stakeholders and governments begin to realize that we, the young people, are no longer the beneficiaries, but we should be the stakeholders of issues to do with water, nutrition, and climate change. In order to improve our situations that we find around climate change and nutrition, we have realized that climate change has multiple burdens of malnutrition as a result of its effects on food security, public hygiene, and water supplies. Not only that, Gerda, but also the quality of food safety. When we go into in-depth, we are going to also realize that these sectors are interlinked. And with such, we need to come up with a collaborative multi-sectorial approach with these sectors. I would also talk about on the perspective of young people. Today, Geda, I'm privileged to present at the COP26 because I live in the urban area, which is Lusaka. I've got a smartphone and I've got a computer and I've got internet. But what of the young people in the remotest part of Zambia, where the food is mainly grown from? How are they going to take part into these solutions? Number one, we need to realize that all these young people in the rural setup need to be part and parcel of the solution making. What could be the solution? Number one, we need to identify the local indigenous knowledge that they know about the climate change. I know back here in Zambia, there's a way where we had local indigenous knowledge on how to predict the weather, if this time around we're going to have a heavy downfall or not. So how can we invest into such interventions to ensure that young people are also empowered and passed on this knowledge to the next generation? Geda, when we talk about improving sustainable management of natural water resources, in improving sustainable management, we need to also bring in the unique mechanisms such as rainwater harvesting systems, where young people have invented various technologies on how to harvest the rainwaters. So how are the governments and global leaders going to partner with young people to bring in their innovation on the table as part of the solutions in fighting climate change and nutrition? Under a minute, Geda, I would also say we need to strengthen the linkage between, nutrition, climate change, and safe water. Why? Because all these are interlinked. And governments should realize that young people are the stakeholders in these sectors, because we are innovative, we are energetic, and we can make things work. Of course, with the guidance from the wiser generation, I would always go. And let us not forget, lastly, children and young people their voices have not been heard from the rural parts of countries or rural parts of provinces. How can governments and leaders amplify their voices and learn from them? Because their solutions are in the community. Their solutions are with the people that are experiencing the challenges that we are facing in terms of water, nutrition, and climate change. I
Excellent.
thank you,
Thank
Geta.
you very much, Maxwell. We come back to you because we might have some concrete questions to you. Our final panelist is Kavindi Sandaruan. Yes. And you're from Sri Lanka. And you speak about vulnerability, including gender, but also solutions, because you find ways to bounce back and make people stronger. Floor is yours.
Okay. Since thank you very much. I'm happy to be the sort of only panelist to be in person here. So I want to add bit on Maxwell's inputs. Though I have a bit of grey hair here and there, I'm also under the youth category. Just want to highlight a few facts the related to youth category, because I was part of the Youth for Climate event. The pre-COP event that happened recently in Milan. So in there also we discuss a couple of things. I mean, a lot of things related. I was part of the food sector. So in addition to the inputs that Maxwell make, there were also, we had this discussion to include risk management, risk transfer mechanisms, how to find these policy frameworks, how to find the policy framework, and also when it comes to the national determined contributions and national adaptation plans, when it comes to the policy level, how to include youth in the decision making process as a cross-cutting stakeholder and have the meaningful participation in the processes. So we also included in the manifesto. I think it is now freely available, and it is, according to the presidency, the Mr. Alok Sharma, he said he'll be taking charge to consider those things.
Okay, that's a nice action on paper, yeah. Very good. But what are your solutions in reality, in practice?
In reality, I can. I'll briefly explain about the Sri Lankan context. So when it comes to the national GDP contribution, and the agriculture sector remains sort of low compared to the other sectors, industrial sector and the sector. But when it comes combined, the agriculture, fisheries, livestock sector and the forestry sector, that has a majority of people representing the country, who's part of who's safeguarding the country's food security and the nutrition part aspects as well. So recently we did a sort of an island-wide the survey along with the International Food System Summit. We did a local food system summit related to youth. They are also they also identified these couple of things. I mean, I'll explain to you what we identified there. So in Sri Lankan context, the rice is the staple crop there, and we cultivate in 2 seasons. Along with that, the main exports crops are tea, rubber, and the coconut, and also the mainly spices. So also the freshwater fisheries and the marine water fisheries, they have all the supplies the protein source of the community. So at the recent times, sort of extensive use of chemical fertilizers has been was in a huge debate, and then which causes soil degradation, soil fertility decline, and the water pollution. So recently, the government has taken a policy decision to shift to a sort of a sustainable agriculture system. So it is at the moment it's happening at the ground level. So when it comes to the food, the water as the main topic here, the water in the ground level, I can explain a bit about the ground level situation, how in Sri Lanka, how we manage the water, distribution of water. So basically, we before a cultivation season, there is a pre and cultivation committee meetings that are happening. That's locally there are a lot of committee meetings happening, and also based on the cropping calendar and the extent of the land and the capacity. We have a tank system which goes back to years in the past. So we are very much based on the tank system where we store water for our agriculture purpose. So based on the capacity of the water in the tanks and the cropping calendar and the extent of the land, so we decide the country decides, the officials decide as to what crop that they need to introduce and decide on the growth rate of the plant and so on. And also they are checking on the seepage when you're transferring the water. They are also checking on the seepage of the water and also the past records of the rainfall while doing the cultivation.
Okay.
So they
okay.
release water.
Kivindi. Yeah, Kivindi. Yeah, you have written much more on your telephone, but normally I do not allow people to read a
just-
speech. No. You're scrolling and you're smart, but we have questions for you. And especially youth leaders, they should be able to speak from the heart, especially
Right.
when they're talking from their country experience.
Yeah.
But I've took one thing from you, which is that as youth, together with others, you have pushed the government to move towards sustainable agriculture. Is that right?
It's sort of a overall policy decision that has been taken, going towards using extensive use of chemical agriculture to
Yeah.
a sort of a shifting to a sort of a sustainable agriculture systems. It was there anyway in the country. It is sort of a policy decision that
So
they have
you did
taken.
it without the government.
Sorry?
So you did it without the government.
We have been doing many pilot projects related to that thing, but now at the moment they have taken a policy decision to move towards a sustainable agriculture system. So
very good.
it was now the island wide.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a policy that
Okay.
is at the moment.
Including the incentives, the financial incentives that are
Yes.
there? Okay, very good.
Financial incentives plus
Yeah.
capacity building as to how
Yeah.
to
Thank
make
you
the
very much.
fertilizers.
So you see, this conversation is very interesting because this is changing a system from the inside. It is bringing people together, developing an agenda, and making sure that at a certain moment the government takes responsibility. Sometimes I think we need to be much more action-oriented. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to a period where you are allowed to ask questions or to make a statement. Not a written statement, but do you have a question for anyone who is in the panel? It's Tuesday afternoon, you might be exhausted, up and running already all day, waiting in lines, being in all the events. All right, it's not happening. I have questions. I have a question. Bizune Asef, Bizune from WASH, please come already to the micro. You are requested to give 2 recommendations to the government of the countries in the Horn and east of Africa about the nexus of water and food systems and the climate. What would be your priority recommendations? Then I come to Susan Lopez, and I would like to ask Susan Lopez, you are advising about a campaign to elect a mayor, and they want to have food and nutrition and water included. What would be your suggestion for the campaign to elect a mayor? First, Bizune. Bizone, please come to the forefront.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, my recommendation to the government is that to support the multi-sectoral and integrated programming in the areas of, in the lowland areas of Africa, actually, with integration of different sectors. I mean, climate change is not addressed by a sectoral intervention. It requires a kind of multi-sectoral interventions, and we have to integrate as well health, nutrition, wash, and the like. So I advise the government to invest on that. The other thing, what is important at the moment in the Horn of Africa, is that we need to push for anticipatory financing for the predictable emergencies. So, I mean, climate change emergencies, it can be predicted. So government has to inject money for the anticipatory financing of predictable emergencies. Thank you, and back to you.
Very good. And my next question is how to make sure that the donors will support the government and this and act as one behind the government. But that's my next question. First we go to Suzanne. Suzanne, the campaign for electing a mayor, including water, nutrition, people, planet. Suzanne.
Gracias, Gerda. El mensaje para esta campaña del alcalde municipal sería que debería dirigir su campaña justamente en promover acciones bajo objetivo común, que en este caso puede ser la nutrición, y que va a sacar adelante su municipio con acciones dentro de su planificación y su presupuesto municipal para atender la problemática que tenga de agua, la principal problemática en términos de malnutrición y la principal problemática que tenga efectos de cambio climático, llámese sequía o llámese exceso de lluvia. Entonces, un poco el sentido de su discurso debería ir orientado hacia trabajar sobre el desarrollo humano como pilar último, la nutrición.
Thank you very much. Susan, my Spanish is not as good as yours, but Susan is telling, make sure that you ask the people what they want to get done to make their life more prosperous in the field of water, in the field of food, in the field of production, and being a lively and surviving community. And this is building the agenda for the mayor, and only the mayor who is ready to invest in his or her people and in the climate of the region will be elected. And I think this shouldn't only happen in Honduras, it should happen everywhere. I'm sometimes surprised that elections are not dealing with people issues and that there is too little on the planet in the campaigns. This should change, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and I, we can do something about it. Maxwell Mumba. Maxwell, you are a leader in the Zambia. You have organized youth food systems dialogues. Where will Zambia be when it comes to food systems, water, and the involvement of youth in 5 years from now? Maxwell.
Thank you, Gerda, for that question. Where do we see ourselves as young people in Zambia for the next 5 years? I'm making a commitment to say we as young people are going to collectively work with governments and stakeholders to ensure that we have a strong collaborative linkage between climate action, nutrition, and water, because these sectors are working hand in hand. And I would also mention to say, we as young people, I would also call out on we the young people in Zambia to ensure that we support the current activities and the current interventions that are being implemented, and also the key government institutions such as the NFNC, to realize that young people really have got the energy in these sectors, so that we contribute towards the climate crisis that we are all trying to achieve. Moreover, if we have a good climate, we will have a good harvest, of which we are going to improve our food security at national level, at community level, and at household level. Thank you, Gerda.
Thank you very much, Maxwell. Kivindi, you're here at the COP. You've been in Milano, so you're traveling the world and meeting with all these people. Nevertheless, it's not happening here. It has to happen at home. Saving the planet, taking care of people when it comes to water, nutrition, it's not happening here. So you go home. What will be your actions to inspire and work with other people to make sure nutrition is safeguarded, food systems are saved, water is safe and available for everyone, while at the same time saving the planet from Sri Lanka?
Okay. When it comes to the policy level discussions, not the ground level, when it comes to policy level discussions, I would suggest to have sort of a more of a public opinion, public-based inputs as well when they're making the policy decisions. So it is to a certain extent it's there. Even let's say as a cross-cutting stakeholders, taking gender and the vulnerable communities, youth as a separate sector, and then include their opinion to the sector is one of the key areas that I'm focusing on, then I'm campaigning about, advocating about. So the other aspects of the thing, when it comes to food sector, when we were doing the all around the research, we found out that many of the issues are pertaining to as well as during the agriculture sessions and then food system summits. So one of the key issues that youth found out that the during the storage supply chain, there were a lot of the damages to the food and the wastage food is there. That's because one option is due to the not use of the proper agriculture methods, and then also the technological issue is there are shortcomings there, and also the machinery sector also we are not using the proper one. Even during the storage as well, the cold storages, and then due to lack of cold storages, there are a lot of food wastages there. That's one thing, and then the general awareness about the food. About the labeling and also the thinking about the climate-friendly aspects of it, the ethical aspects of the food systems. So they are the main things that I would focus going back to the country and
So
then
you
promoting.
see, Kivindu, he's now leaving his cell phone here. He's speaking from the heart. I find him much more attractive when this gentleman is speaking from the heart, because he is now on action and what he will do when he is at home. And I'm sure he has
I want to have those statistics
Yes,
correct.
I
I
know.
can't mess with the statistics.
You see,
So
you see.
when I was in the phone,
So start to talk about actions and focus on results. Kivindi, we will find you back somewhere, but you will always be focused on the action and what has to happen. And the next time, forget your cell phone, forget your preparation, talk from the heart. Now we go to Sean Farrell. He's the development specialist of foreign affairs and trade in Ireland. Sean, what are your
Thank you very much, Gerda. I'm going to start with where we started to sum up what we've been through in this session. And we started very much with the connections. So we looked at the connections between climate change, food security, water supply, nutrition. And then we moved on to the problems, particularly talking about the impact of climate change on the 3.2 billion people who live in water-stressed areas, and what it's like to be somebody who lives in an area that's water-stressed, and the interconnections of climate and conflict. But in fair play, Gerda, you moved us on really quickly to talk about what we really wanted to talk about today, and that is about solutions. And ultimately, this session was focused on talking and imagining what some of the solutions could be. So I want to sum up the inputs from all of our colleagues by making 3 points. So the 3 Ps, as I call them: participation, the practical, and the political. So let me start with participation. We started off with a number of inputs talking about how participation of people in various processes is absolutely essential if we're going to work together, if we're going to abandon silos, and if we're going to imagine solutions to some of the bigger problems we face. And this participation came through in the input from Honduras, the example of different stakeholders working together on issues and making progress, bringing health, water, and social services all together, incentivizing that. It also came through around youth participation in Zambia, and indeed it came through around the voice of youth in Sri Lanka. But I think most important, what came through in this is that those who are most impacted must participate, and spaces for their participation must not just be found but must be granted and given. The second thing we talked about was the practical, my second P, and this was examples of solutions that are practically grounded and which can have a huge impact. We had the examples, for example, of new crops from Madagascar that need less water, so that we know that water is a finite resource and therefore we simply have to use it better. We had the example from Zambia of bringing local knowledge, making sure it's passed on to a new generation. We had the examples of rice from Sri Lanka. I found it fascinating that there was both a whole cropping calendar, but there was also plans in place for the distribution of water. So we know that there are practical solutions that are rooted in local communities that can have a huge impact. The third one is probably the hardest one to grasp, but maybe the most important. My third P is the political, that governments need to take responsibility, and this needs to be a political agenda. We had examples from, for example, the Kenya cross-border conflict. That requires political solutions. Financing for climate emergencies requires budget decisions in country and globally. From Sri Lanka, we had a really good example of a government decision to shift to a sustainable food systems approach. And in Zambia, we had the example of how a political decision could be that sectors would work together. So these three Ps, the participation, the practical and the political, are a clustering of the sorts of solutions that we can imagine. As we head and look back on this year, we've had Food System Summit, we're now at COP, and we head to Nutrition for Growth. It's really important that we build the momentum in these three areas. We have a unique opportunity to build the momentum around particularly the practical and the political. We will be making pledges that are both practical in terms of funding and political in terms of policy that should and will have an impact on both the people who live today and those who will obviously come in the future. Thanks, Gerda, and thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. I can only say amen. Nothing to add, but I would like to say a big thanks to all the people who participated in an active way. I would like to thank you for continue to look whether you are interested. I hope you found some interest in the messages, but whatever you take home, it is take home that it's this. This COP is about saving the planet. You will never be able to save the planet without taking care of people. Just like the other way around, you will never be able to take care of the people if you don't invest in the planet. So it's joint action. It's indeed about participation, people, it's about practical, and it's about political. Don't shy away. The hands in our future. The future is in our hands. We can make it happen for people and planet alike. And WASH, food systems and nutrition are indispensable in any solution. Thank you so much. The meeting is closed.